Hi, and welcome to a session on finding the right college for you. My name is Anita Narayan. I'm the education editor at U.S. News and World Report. So what we're going to talk about today is finding the right school for you and some do's and don'ts when it comes to that process. So I'll speak for a few minutes, and then I'm going to take some questions from those of you that are joining us today. So just a brief introduction. U.S. News just released the 30th edition of the Best Colleges rankings a week ago, and it's all available at usnews.com/colleges. But we offer much more than just the rankings. Clearly, that's what a lot of people know us for. But the fun part of my job is that I get to oversee daily editorial content that's really helping prospective students and their families just really learn about how to research, apply to, and pay for school. All the kind of big sort of ticket questions that come with finding the right college for you. So what I'm going to do is really talk through some of the do's and don'ts that people should keep in mind when finding the right school. So the number one do is that you should use the rankings, but only as one tool in the process. So I think sometimes people are surprised that we say that, but the truth is we've been saying that since 1983, since the first edition of Best Colleges came out. For this year's rankings and on the site, we have data on nearly 1,800 four-year schools. And I think something that might surprise people is that we have nearly 50 different types of rankings and lists. So people are very familiar with our rankings of the top national universities and liberal arts colleges, but we really try to take all of the data that we collect from schools and present them and come up with different lists that are going to be applicable to different types of students. So beyond the overall rankings that we have, we really encourage people to look at different lists, such as best value schools. You know, if the cost of college is of concern, which it is to many people, the best value schools can really point you in a direction of which schools are very generous when it comes to financial aid. Another great list that we have is A-plus schools for B students. Clearly not everyone out there is an A student or a straight A student, but there are very great schools, competitive schools, and top-ranked schools that offer the opportunity for non-straight A students to enter and to do well and to thrive. Another great option is top public schools. A lot of the public schools offer a great number of resources for students, so that might be the right choice for you. So if you jump down to the don'ts that I have listed out, one of the main don'ts is don't rely solely on the rankings to choose a college. That would be a huge mistake, and we're the first people to say that at U.S. News. Don't just rely on the rankings. Another do that I would suggest in terms of finding the right college is to really study the data. On our site and on other college sites as well, you can find a lot of data that would help you find the right school for you. So what I mean by that are things like the school size. Do you want to go to a school with a huge enrollment? Sometimes a larger university is going to make you feel more at home because they have a lot more resources, or you enjoy the opportunity to just meet people from all walks of life and from all sorts of different countries. But for other students, that's going to be overwhelming. So you want to look at that data point. You want to look at class size. You want to understand student-faculty ratios. You want to get the sense of how much interaction are you going to have. Are large lecture halls more of your thing, or would you really prefer kind of intimate professor-student relationships so that you can really get to know your academic focus and get to know your teachers? Academic majors, too, is really an important thing to look at. So a lot of that data is also on the U.S. News site and, again, on other sites as well. If you are interested in specific programs, don't just go to a school because you think it's highly ranked. If it doesn't offer the program that you're interested in, then you might end up being miserable. So really be smart about your choices. There's other data points, like looking at incoming students' SAT and ACT test scores. That can really help give you a sense of how you compare amongst the students that they have typically accepted. You can also look at freshman retention rate. That's really can give you an indication of how hard is a school working to keep its students from dropping out, which can be of concern. So that's really what I mean when I say you really need to study the data. At the end of the day, and I'll probably say this over and over, so I apologies if I sound like a broken record, but you really do want to find the right fit for you. Another do in terms of finding the right college for you is to talk to parents, talk to high school guidance counselors, talk to alumni, talk to school officials. You really want to do your research, and sometimes that's going to come from having honest conversations with people. It's not just looking at numbers or looking at rankings or looking at school websites. Guidance counselors, if you have access to them, they're a great resource. But so are alums of schools, and schools have alumni networks that you can reach out to. They can be very honest about the good and the bad of the schools that you're interested in. And don't forget your parents. They can certainly be useful as well, and may have their own networks from their college days or from people that they work with. So just don't count out the people in your life that can really help you with this huge decision. Another important thing to keep in mind when looking for the right school for you is to keep in mind the costs and financial aid. That may seem like a no-brainer, but I think one of the things we hear at US News is that often parents and students don't start early enough in the process when they're looking for the right school for them in terms of thinking about how to pay for college. So just some basic tips that we have include connecting with college financial aid officers early in the process before you even apply. There can be real value to doing that. Another basic tip, but that one that we, from what we understand, not everybody is necessarily doing, is to use these things called net price calculators. They're available on all the schools' websites, and they help you estimate the cost of attending a school based on different factors that you put in, like your family income, other personal data, and they will take into account the grant aid that you might be eligible for. So once that's deducted, what is the typical out-of-pocket costs going to be? Net price calculators can vary according to schools and how many questions they ask, so always keep in mind that those are estimates, but those are amongst the things that you really need to think about when you're looking and researching the right school for you. Another good tip when it comes to paying for school and things that you should ask about are how much aid do upperclassmen receive on average. So you want to think beyond just your first year, because the first year might be where you get this great financial aid package, but you don't know for sure what's going to happen in your subsequent years. So it could really help paint a picture if you're asking schools, okay, so what do you typically on average give to your sophomores, your juniors, and your seniors? And then the last, I think, do that I would really suggest in terms of the kind of top 5 do's when it comes to finding the right school for you is to really visit campuses if possible. You can really connect with students and get a real feel for what the school is like and what kind of culture it's going to offer to you. So we can't emphasize that enough, that the ability to go on campus visits can really help you connect with current students, if possible, even with faculty, certainly with other admissions officers, if you haven't met any along the way. With the understanding, though, that not everybody is able to do campus visits. I can speak from personal experience. When I came to the U.S. some 20 years ago, that was my first time stepping foot in this country. I came as an international student. I did not have the ability to do campus visits. But you know, in this day and age, you also have the opportunity to do virtual tours. Campus websites offer those. There are companies out there that offer virtual tours. So take advantage of whatever opportunity you have to really dig into what a school is like. Make sure you take advantage of that. I'm going to move on to what some of the don'ts are, and some of these I've sort of covered, but I'll repeat them. I think they're worth repeating. And then I'm going to move on to taking some questions. So one big don't, which I've already mentioned, is don't rely solely on the rankings to choose a college. So I think I've kind of walked through what some of those reasons are and why it would be a mistake to just look at the rankings. But just remember that the rankings are just one tool, and they can help you search for schools, compare schools. The data that we have on usnews.com/colleges is quite comprehensive. So the nice thing is it's all there. It's sort of a one-stop shop to help you do your research. Another don't is don't forget to consider your career and personal goals. So career goals are huge. You really want to think through what is it that you want to do after you get this degree, after presumably after 4 years. What is it that you want to do with that degree? You need to be thinking about that now as you're looking for the right school for you. So again, if a school is very well known for a particular academic major, and that's what you're interested in, and that's where you see yourself going in terms of a career path, then that has great value, regardless of if it's incredibly highly ranked. So again, it's really important to find the right fit. And when I say personal goals, that includes things like extracurricular activities, your hobbies. Is Greek life important to you? Is attending football games important to you? Is volunteering something that you're interested in doing? Those are all things that you want to keep in mind. So that would be a big no-no, a big don't if you didn't keep that in mind when looking for the right school for you. Another don't that we would say or that we would advise students against is following the crowd. And what we mean by that is going to a school simply because your friends are going there, or people that you used to know or relatives are at that school. Certainly you want to feel comfortable and you want to feel like you're going to be safe and have somebody to count on, but that shouldn't be the reason that you're choosing a school. A school is not the right fit simply because your best friend is attending. I think another mistake is going to campus visits unprepared. As I mentioned earlier, a real do is to try and visit campuses and to ask questions. So you really shouldn't go unprepared without a list of questions to ask and to really get your questions answered. It would be a real mistake to leave a campus visit, to go on a campus tour, and then to leave and realize, wait a second, that was kind of useless. All I saw was some buildings and saw some good-looking co-eds, but didn't really get my questions answered. And certainly that's a tip for both parents and students to keep in mind. And then the last don't that I would say here as I wrap up about 10-15 minutes of this sort of introductory part of today's webinar is to wait until the last minute. So that might seem like it's common sense, but I think it's human nature, regardless of what your age is, often to want to procrastinate. But finding the right college is hugely important. It's a huge investment. And it's not as though it's the be-all and end-all. Obviously, there are opportunities to transfer, but this is a big decision, and you want to make sure you invest the time and energy in the same way that if you were to buy a car or buy a house, you wouldn't just run out and get the first thing. You would really put your research into it, and waiting until the last minute is going to cut into that research time. So just keep that in mind. This is that college matters, and the decision does matter. It's going to have an impact on your future career and your opportunities for graduate school. So really put in the time and effort needed. So I'm going to, I think, stop there, and I want to make sure that I take some questions today. So I know we have some questions that have been submitted from people that are joining us today. So one question that's asked is, what do I need to know on a campus visit? So we have somebody that's asked that question. And I think that's a great question. I know I've mentioned in the last few minutes that you need to, if you can, go on campus visits. So I think there are certain kinds of questions that you want to ask during campus tour. So maybe I can give some examples of those for the viewer who asked that question. Think about all the things that are going to matter during your 4 years there. So one thing is food. So that might be surprising for me to bring that up, but ask about what the food's like. Ask about the residence halls if you're thinking about living on campus. It's a good idea if you have a personal tour guide or a campus tour guide to actually ask that tour guide about their personal experience with the school. Yes, they might be a little skewed because they are the tour guide, so they clearly enjoy representing their school, but it's worth also asking he or she, why did he or she choose that school? What was it that was the selling point for them? That could be really helpful to you as you're on a campus visit. Another great question is to ask about class sizes. I think sometimes you can see the statistic, whether that's on the US News site or the college website. But if you were to ask current students, just as they're walking around, tell me a little bit about what class sizes are like and what is that interaction like with professors. That can be really huge because that can fit in with what your learning style is like. As you get through high school, you get a sense of, okay, this works for me and this doesn't work for me, and this is what I need to do to succeed in college. So am I going to be okay with larger class sizes or a mix, or do I really need to attend a school where the class sizes are really small? Another question that I would suggest asking during campus visits is campus safety policies. This is a huge concern. As some of you may know, that this has been a topic that's sort of come up a lot in the media lately, I would say over the last 6 months or so, and certainly Congress and the White House are paying much more attention to campus safety, and within that broader campus safety issue, sexual assaults on campus. As I mentioned, US News does publish a lot of editorial content to help guide parents and students, so I would encourage all of you who are interested to check out a guide that we wrote, which was 10 questions that every parent and student should ask schools about campus safety. One thing to keep in mind is it might be difficult to ask about campus safety to just your student tour guide on campus when you're doing a campus tour, so you probably want to talk to an admissions official or another official at the school. A current student may not be able to speak to all the campus safety policies, but they can certainly guide you to the people to speak with. So just to kind of get into the granulars a little bit, when I talk about campus safety, some examples of questions that you could ask during a campus visit is, how does the school communicate with students in an emergency? Is it by text? Are there other types of sirens? How does that work? You want to also ask who handles the campus safety measures. Are there security on campus? Is it in working with the local security off campus? You want to understand how that works. You also want to ask about crime statistics outside of campus, meaning the kind of general vicinity around the campus. What is that area like, and what is the crime situation there? And for those of you that might be interested in living off campus, you want to ask questions like, how are off-campus students protected? What is safety? What does safety mean in terms of the school policies for off-campus students? In some campuses, off-campus might actually literally just be down the street from the campus. So what does that mean? So again, there's a lot there when it comes to asking those kinds of questions. And then let me just give a few more examples of questions to ask during a campus visit, because I do think that this is a very important question that the viewer submitted. You want to ask what the local town or city is like. Again, even though you might be attending a school for academic reasons, you do want to think about what is your social and personal life going to be like. So understanding, is a local town going to be the right fit for me? Are there opportunities there, or is a bigger city better because I might have a lot more opportunities for research or for internships? So really think through what kinds of questions you want to ask. Parents often make a point to ask about services, meaning support services. Those can range from academic services, so that you understand how can you work with, or how do the school work with students when they're struggling academically. But services also means career services, meaning how exactly does your career office or career services center help students find jobs? I think that's really important to ask that question and to ask about internships. Is it purely just a place where other students are helping you critique your resume and cover letter, which may be sufficient for some people, or is it a really active one where they're constantly helping you with job fairs and really helping with placement services? So hopefully that helps answer that question. I think that was a very good one, and one that hopefully is some of the answers are helpful to some of you. Let me take a look and see what other questions we have. How do we, let's see. Is it okay if you're undecided on a major? That's certainly okay, and I think you want to go to a place that's the right fit for you. Ideally, you have some sense of what it is that you want to study. I do think it's a little bit of a mistake to attend a college or to make that final decision without having any clue about what you want to study, because as you attend a school, if you suddenly come across a field that you're interested in and realize that this school isn't the right fit, then you do need to think about transferring. But not knowing right away what it is that you want to declare, that is okay. That's one of the beauties, I think, of the American education system, is that ability to decide after you set foot on campus. But I would really encourage exploration at the high school level. So for those of you particularly that are maybe freshmen or parents of freshmen and sophomores, you really want to work with that time period and really do some exploration and do some, whether you're doing it through AP classes or by other means, get a sense of what it is academically that you're interested in studying. In terms of some other questions, what happens if you get to college and it's not the right fit? Again, that's not the end of the world. I think you need to remember that this is an important decision, but finding the right fit it's tough, and you really want to do all of your research. So ideally, the purpose of today's presentation is to really get you guys thinking about what are all the things that I can think about, from cost to fit, in terms of academics to extracurriculars. What are the things that I can look at now before I even submit my applications? But certainly the transfer population is a huge part of the undergraduate system currently. And a lot of schools do make it easy to transfer. But if you think that going into a school you're not sure, do your research again. That comes into play even with transfer policies. Understand, how does your school work when it comes to transferring to another institution? That can be really helpful to you if you are unsure and think that in a couple of years you might want to go to another place. Let me see what other questions we have. What should I do if my parent doesn't like the college that I picked? So that's a very sort of personal question, but I think that I'm sure a lot of students deal with that. I think obviously the key to that is communication with your parents, and just reminding them that they're not the ones going to college. Now, keep in mind, though, they might be the ones helping you pay for college. If that's the case, then again, it is a personal discussion that needs to be had. But I think if you can prove that you've done your research, again, I might sound like a broken record, but if you can prove that you have laid out all the reasons why this is the right school for you, and you have figured out a plan in terms of how to pay for it, then it's worth that discussion. But obviously that's a tough spot. I think it really is going to depend on the family, but you'll have a much stronger case if you can say that, this school gives me the opportunity to study chemistry, this is the degrees that I want to end up with, and this is the job that I can end up with. You can make an argument for why that school is the right one for you. Another question we get quite a bit is tips for parents and students in terms of thinking about college costs. What kinds of things should they keep in mind? And I know I spoke about that a little bit, but I did want to give a little bit of advice along that line. I think one of the things to think about is when looking at financial aid awards, understanding what is free money versus what is loans that you're going to have to pay back. I'm sure you've all heard about the crazy amount of student debt that's taken out on average. Obviously, it varies, so keep in mind these average numbers. Some students are not graduating with as much debt as some of the numbers might have you believe. But you really do want to do that research. Again, to repeat the mantra, you want to do some early research, and that includes talking to a school and understanding in their typical aid awards, are they including a lot of loans, because you could be paying those back for many years to come. I think also making sure that you don't assume that awards are renewable in subsequent years. So if you get this great financial aid package for your first year, you really want to ask, hey, is this going to be true for my subsequent years? And what does that mean, again, in terms of scholarships or grants, money that you don't have to pay back versus loans, money that you do have to pay back? You should also think about add-on fees, extra fees. Sometimes I think that's something that people miss. We talk a lot about the cost of attending a school, but you need to think about things like travel. If you are going to school at a great distance from your home, that's a cost to think about. There's certainly the cost of textbooks, which have really sort of taken on a whole life of their own, depending on where you go to school and the type of academic major that you're pursuing. So just remember to think about additional costs. And if you're not sure what those additional costs are, ask when you go on campus visits. Ask current students, hey, were there additional costs that you just didn't think about when you were applying as a junior or senior, that you really wish somebody had told you? The more you ask, the more you research, the better fit you're going to find. I think the other thing I would, in response to this question about tips for thinking about financial aid and costs, is to remember that you can try and negotiate. Schools don't like to use the word negotiate, but they do encourage you to contact the admissions officers, and particularly the financial aid officers, once you receive a package, an acceptance letter, and a financial aid award, especially if there's been a drastic change in your family circumstances. Financial aid officers need to know that. They're not going to know unless you tell them, whether that's a parent being laid off or other situations. So that's one opportunity where you can talk about the aid package and explain why it's not sufficient, but you really do want to attend that school. You can also, again, they don't like the word negotiate, but you can say that you've received an aid package, if that's the case, from a similar school that's much higher, that's significantly higher than what the school that you would love to attend is offering. You could try and appeal for a higher aid award. Doesn't guarantee that it's always going to happen, but you don't know until you ask. So that's one thing to keep in mind. So I know we're coming up on the half-hour mark here, so let me see if there are any other questions that I can answer. So give me 1 second, let me take a look. So one person asks, what are some great questions to ask when attending a college fair, and how do I make my time at a college fair most meaningful? So that's a great question. I think it's sort of similar to the questions that you should ask when you go on a campus visit. I would say one big no-no in terms of what to ask at a college fair is simple things that can be answered by looking at a school website, in terms of number of students or what clubs are offered. I think the admissions officer behind that booth ideally does not want to answer those questions, because honestly, you can do that by doing a little research. So really come prepared with specific questions for that specific school. So things like, hey, I am interested in electrical engineering, and I understand that the department works with students to get them internships. Can you give me examples of what those internships are? What have students gone on to do after they've left school? So you really want to go prepared with a few questions. You probably can't have a whole laundry list of questions, so I'd suggest going with 3 or 4 really good specific ones. Again, keeping in mind, try not to ask kind of the basic question of, do you offer engineering, or do you offer aid? Really ask some specific questions when you go to the college fairs. You really want to make an impression. At a college fair, admissions officers are meeting with so many students, so the more granular your question is, the more I think of an impact you're going to make on that admissions officer, because they're going to see that you have genuine interest, that you're not just somebody that's a shopper, somebody that's walking by an admissions booth and picking up pamphlets just so that they can say that they went to an admissions fair. That's not a good use of anybody's time. So thank you for that question. I think that was a great question. So let me see what other questions we have. So I think people are asking about scholarship opportunities. So I think one of the things that people don't realize when it comes to scholarships are that there are places to look beyond just what the school offers you. So that's something you can definitely work on as you're in high school. You know, as you put your hobbies and your extracurricular activities to use, they can actually help you pay for college. So one plug that I would make, I mean, there are many sites out there, so certainly keep that in mind. But on the U.S. News website, we have a blog called The Scholarship Coach, and it's written by some wonderful folks from Scholarship America. And every week they offer blog posts dedicated to this topic about how can you have or how can you find scholarships for musicians? How can you find scholarships for people that study want to study criminology? There are all sorts of scholarships out there. You'd be really surprised. There are places like foundations. There are private and public companies that offer scholarships. There are scholarships in your own backyard, meaning if you look in your local community, they might be offering scholarships. Your parents' employers might offer scholarships, so you might want to ask your parents if their companies offer scholarships for the employees' children. There's a lot of opportunities out there, and some of them might be small. I mean, and you might think it's not worthwhile. It might just be $2,000, but you really need to keep in mind that all of that can add up. So there's definitely resources out there, but like I've said for the last 30 minutes, you need to do your research. But don't give up. There's really a lot of opportunity and different search engines too. On the blog, we've talked about alternative search engines that are out there, and there are some really wacky scholarships out there for every type of interest and every type of niche. So keep that in mind when you're looking for scholarships. So let me see what other questions we got. Thank you so much for submitting these questions. Let's see. So one person asked, should I major in what I love or what makes me money? So that's a great question, and I'm sure you're going to get all sorts of different answers depending on who you talk to, from your parents to your counselors to your friends. So I think the important question is, what is it that you want to do with that degree? So is there an opportunity to use that degree to then take you into your next step? So you really want to really weigh getting a degree in something that you love, as long as you think that it can then take you to your next step. You want to be passionate about what you do later in life, but you also want to be smart. So, you know, I think my advice really is just to do your research and really think through, what is it that I want to do with this degree? And if I am that passionate, can I make a case for it? Can I find alums who have done something with that degree? Did they struggle? So, and yet again, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but doing your research, you can answer that question quite easily, I think, once you really talk to people and look at the career opportunities out there. There are sites like the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the government website, that can tell you what the career projection is like for certain fields, including ones that may typically seem like they are lowly paid. So I think you can find the information you're looking for, and hopefully come, you know, to a good middle ground in terms of pursuing a degree that you're really interested in and that can help you find a job. So hopefully that answered that question. So I'm going to keep looking for some other questions. So one person is asking about, you know, if you are applying to school and trying to pay for it without parental help, you know, whether you would qualify for aid. And so I think the important thing to keep in mind, one of the basic tips that we always give out, and certainly this is not unique to U.S. News, hopefully all sorts of other companies that work in college admissions are giving this advice as well. Fill out the FAFSA. Fill out the federal student aid form. Even if you think you're not going to be eligible for aid, I think sometimes people just have all sorts of assumptions. That is your first step to at least seeing what you're eligible for. So I just want to make sure that I make that really clear, that people really need to make sure they fill out the FAFSA. Don't ignore filling that form out. In terms of other questions, let me take a look. So I think we're still seeing a lot of questions about tuition and scholarships, which I certainly appreciate. I think one of the things I would again encourage people to do is U.S. News has a section devoted purely to paying for college. One of the articles we just recently published last week was about some lessons that you can teach mom and dad about paying for college. So for those of you students out there, I'd really encourage you to take a look at that. So I think for some parents, college, you could work your way through college on a part-time job. And things aren't quite the same with today's wages and with all the demands of being in college. So I think that might be helpful. So I just wanted to make sure I mentioned that. You might want to take a look at that article because that could answer some questions or help you communicate with your parents about how things have changed, how the cost of college has changed, and if they are going to be helping, this is sort of the case. And one of the things I think to keep in mind is that student loan debt is a scary thing, but sometimes taking on a little bit of debt could be okay. Again, it depends on your circumstances, but if you are doing it kind of in a manageable way and you're taking it out for the right reasons, you're not over borrowing. It could be manageable. So there's a lot out there. It's a very complicated question. So just make sure, if you can, take a look at our Paying for College section. There's a lot of helpful advice there. So let me try and see if I can take one more question. One person was asking, I'm a high school senior, should I get a job to help pay for college or just focus on my work and apply to college? And I think that's a great question. Honestly, it's a very individual choice, whether to get a job to help pay for college. I think one mistake is doing a job that would affect your ability to really fill out your applications in a way that do them justice, if that makes sense. So I think this is a very individual case in the sense that you need to see, are you the type that can multitask? Do you have the time to really devote to your college applications? If not, then working could affect that. But I think having a job certainly can help you, even in your college applications. One of the things that we found is sometimes people think about just their extracurricular activities. They don't think about their hobbies or their jobs as being as important to talk about in their college applications. But a college admissions officer might find that unique if you can paint a picture of why, as a high school student, you're working. What is it that you're trying to achieve? What are you doing? What type of job are you doing? How does that apply to the field that you want to study in college? So those are all things that you want to weigh. I don't think there's a right or wrong to the question of whether you should work while you're in the midst of juggling your college applications. It's just a question, too, of time management and figuring out if that's the right move for you. Clearly, being able to work will help you in terms of your college funds, but you don't want to do that where it's going to be to the detriment of being able to fill out your college applications thoroughly and in time. So hopefully that answers some questions. Let me just, I know I said I was going to take one more, but let me see if I can take one or two more. So one question we have is, what advice would you give to an adult returning to school if they've been out of the education system for a while? I think that's a great question, and more and more campuses have non-traditional students in the sense that they're students that are 25 years and above. But I think there's a lot of options, honestly, for adult students these days. So I think you really want to think about a number of things. You want to think about your learning style. You want to think about what services do schools offer for non-traditional students, meaning you're probably not as interested in some of the extracurricular activities or attending football games or the social atmosphere as much. So you want to ask schools directly when you're doing your research, what types of groups, what types of academic services do you afford to older students? And then I think another thing to keep in mind is that online education is huge for adult students, especially for people that are going to be working, whether that's part-time or full-time, but still want to return to school and get that degree. U.S. News actually ranks online programs as well. This is a growing area of higher education, so that could be one place to start. I mean, I can tell you that this is a new area. U.S. News has only been ranking online programs for the last several years, but we also do a lot of editorial content about online education. So I'd really encourage you to take a look at that, because that might be an option for you if you aren't looking at going back to sort of the traditional brick and mortar environment. And there's a lot of myths out there, I think, about online education, where you might think that it might not be up to par with kind of your traditional brick and mortar schools, and that's not really the case anymore. Again, like anything, I'm going to say it again, you want to do your research. There are definitely some programs that aren't going to be as great as others, but you want to look at, okay, if I'm looking at an online program, what are some areas of study that I'm most interested in? And again, what are students doing with it? Where are alums ending up? How do employers view an online degree? So just a few options I wanted to mention, particularly for adult students. The other thing I would also mention is that you still want to fill out the FAFSA. You still want to see what kind of aid eligibility you have. There are also, earlier in this discussion, I was mentioning all the different scholarships that are out there. There are also plenty of scholarships for adult students. You need to look through, do your research and find those. But for adult students, that's a growing population, and you shouldn't feel like there isn't a place for you in higher ed. But I would definitely, if there are particular schools that you're interested, whether they're online or brick and mortar, I would ask about services for adult students, because some schools are going to do a better job than others. So you do want to kind of dig into that. And in some ways, similar to the questions that I was mentioning when you go on a campus visit, you want to ask about support services. I think that's a huge one. So I hope that answered that question. Let me see if there's anything else. One person asked, do you think living on campus can benefit the student regardless of the financial responsibilities that might accompany it? I think living on campus is, I think, something that if you're a student that really wants to feel like part of the community, that is certainly one way. Sometimes a student might come to a campus and just feel like it's so large, it's hard to meet people. The adjustment period might be tougher for some students. So living on campus is certainly worth looking into if that's the kind of social atmosphere you're looking for, and also academic atmosphere, meaning the ability to have study groups on campus and all of that. So it really is worth looking into. It's worth looking into the costs, though. We at US News always encourage people to do the comparisons, meaning look at a school and ask them, again, those questions. If I were to live on campus, this is the room and board cost. What is the typical kind of cost for a student that chooses to live off campus? And do that comparison. It's not necessarily going to be what you think. In some cases, it might be cheaper to live off campus. In other cases, it might be more expensive. So that's really important to think about beyond just sort of the social kind of academic aspects that I mentioned. So I think, again, not a right or wrong answer, but it's really a question of what you're looking for and seeing what the differences in costs, typically or particularly based on location of the school as well. If it's in a more urban or rural setting, that can have an effect. So keep that in mind. One student is asking if online programs are good options for a high school graduate. Certainly that could be an option. I would say that most online learners at this point are adult students. So they are people that are juggling different options for them. So I think if you are a high school graduate and you're looking at going into an online program, there are certainly options there. As I mentioned, at usnews.com, you can find online program rankings. And what you'll find is many of the programs that offer four-year bachelor degree fully online, they're often associated with brick and mortar institutions. So meaning traditional institutions that have an online arm, and they're offering their full degree online. So you might want to look at those schools to start with to get a sense of what is this like, what's the average age like, will I fit in? Even if it's in an online environment, you're still going to have to do group work, you're still going to have to interact with students. So I think that's one thing to keep in mind. So I think I'm going to go ahead and end the presentation there. I do appreciate everybody writing in with questions. Hopefully this was helpful. Again, I would encourage you to go to usnews.com/colleges. We have a wealth of content there. Like I said, it's not just about the rankings, it's about finding the right fit for you. So on a day in and day out basis, we are publishing editorial content, most of which has nothing to do with the rankings, to be honest. It's really about helping you and your families research, apply to, and pay for school in a smart way. So feel free to connect with us. We are on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on Google+. Send us your questions. We'd be happy to point you in the right direction, and good luck in your college search. Thank you again for joining us, and for U.S. News and World Report, Anita Narayan. Thank you.